I'm going to go back over some material that we just started to cover a couple weeks ago. But this is that whole smear campaign stuff that we were doing. And first thing is, just as a quick recap on the fundamental 5 points for side control, because I realize some of you, it's been a while since you got over them, or maybe you hadn't seen them before. But essentially you have your arm positions with weight distribution. Okay, so correct positioning on top, locking in your tight position, number 1. Number 2 has to be all the time, hand in hand with that, is blocking out the near side hip. I'm going to do that with my knee, my own hip, or my bicep. And you want to think of that like a bookmark, that in order to keep your place, you always have to have something there before you move away from it, okay? Before you advance in the novel, right, you got to have the bookmark in. So if I wanted to, say, have my knee there and then take the knee away to start circling and changing my position, I first need to switch my bicep to have it there before I take my knee away. Otherwise, at any moment, savvy bottom player is going to be able to put you back into guard with a quick movement of the hip. Okay? So tight position, arm position, locked in, blocking out the near side hip, number 2. Number 3, taking out the near side arm or killing the near side arm. And kind of go into that briefly. If you have those first 3, you're pretty much in the game and able to play at a pretty high level. Okay? Then 4 and 5 essentially get into sort of like the next level of somebody who's got really good movement, and if I've killed the near side arm, the only way somebody can really escape at that point, and I'm blocking out the hip and good tight position, is to roll away from me so I control the far elbow. Okay, meaning that way I can slow down their roll or even stop their roll. Maybe they start to roll away, but I pin them on their side and I can attack. And then finally you have the pressure of your submissions. So that's the main part of the game, and what I'm focusing on for this part right now is how to really be as positionally conservative as possible. And the whole idea of, like, this is a stupid word, but the POMISSION, the positional submission, where you really don't have to change your position. You don't come out of side control to be able to finish somebody. And early on we all learn, like, okay, crossbody like Americana, Kimura, if they wiggle, straight arm lock and stuff, but like, hard to get those once somebody has good defense, because they don't just leave their arm dangling for you to isolate. So I want to kind of come back to those, but with the nuances that allow you to really attack that far arm and shut somebody down. And you're moving very minimalistically, but it's just, that's where the smear campaign comes in. It's like smear, 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 until finally they go from, you've got their body controlled, and then you're starting to move across, and now they can still articulate at the shoulder a little bit. Then you get it so now they can only articulate at the elbow. Finally, only the wrist, and hey, wiggle your fingers all you want, but now you're tapped out, right? That's the idea. So I want to come back to point 3, which presumes point 1 and 2. You have good tight position and you're blocking up the near side hip. And we go into point 3. And what you guys notice, probably like the most common way to think of killing the arm is to get in between the arm and the body. So a lot of times we look at it like this. So say I've got a traditional crossface underhook, so my knee is blocked out, and then at some point, as I'm in here, you'll notice, even though a lot of times we think about this top arm being the framing arm, so if Ryan goes to bridge, okay, this would be create a little space. This would be the one that would like lever against my neck so he can start to create a little space. But once he starts to shrimp, okay, if he just say, I'm going to get back on top, just keep that arm against your body and start to shrimp. Okay. Yeah, just follow easily, but it's a no-brainer. Just scoot in. So this arm is extremely important, because at some point, as Ryan creates space, this is his bookmark. It's what he needs as a spacer. So remembering that, a lot of times what you do is you wait for the moment where his elbow starts to come away from his body as he moves away. He creates his frame and he moves away from it, and that's where I'd slide into position. So a lot of times you'll see this. Okay, so it starts to move, and then from here, I make my switch. My knee coming right up alongside the body. Then from here, I bring my knees together so I can make sure I'm underneath the elbow. If I need to, scoot up a little bit more. And now if I want to, turn back in. And from here, to look at it from the other side, and now we have the arm sandwich. This is when I'd actually bring my knees up tight because now I've brought my knee up essentially to the top of his head. And I can either keep the crossface from here or bring it to the far side. Okay, and now I'm so deep under him with my hip and pelvis that I'm underneath his shoulder, not even his tricep. Okay, so this is the part where I go from like sprawling pressure on him to compression. Now the whole idea is to slow down or stop his ability to reclaim that arm. So if Ryan starts to move around from here, good. Okay, I've really got it dialed in. And now I can start to attack the neck, attack this arm, so on and so forth. Okay, so that is the idea. Now what I want to do first, before I go into the smear stuff, is come back here for a second. Talk about another way which I actually prefer to kill this arm, which is very sneaky and works a lot because people don't expect it. The shift of my body is enough for someone to have that frame on my hip and just pull the elbow in. So sometimes what I'll be doing is this. Okay, I'm in here like this, and as Ryan's moving around, I just take a moment without really changing the upper body position at all to have my top knee, this one, come down and meet my other knee, okay, from here, and just slide up. Okay, so one more time. Right there. And I get into the exact same position, but without the shift of my body that the hip switch will require. So when you do that, you want to make sure your knee comes down, touches your other knee, and moves directly alongside the body and comes up. Okay, if I bring it away from his body, that's enough that he may bury the elbow back in. I just need to make sure my knee is underneath his elbow, and then it will typically get all the way up into the armpit. All right, let's try that one first. All right, so a couple details. If I go to the first one, okay, first of all, never forget about this part. Especially if you got a bad neck like me, the moment that Ryan makes the bridge, and he has connected this well, so he's got a frame, okay, I'm in the deficit. So if he escapes his hip right now, he's going to be able to connect his near side elbow and knee together before I can typically shut him down if he's really adept at that movement. So the simple thing minus a scramble is as soon as I feel this, I do that, okay? Chin literally resting on your shoulder while I'm giving crossface and everything, but even that won't necessarily slow down somebody's bridge. But once I do this, go ahead. Okay. Now he can move my body a little bit, but I stay connected. I don't have this happen to me, okay? So it protects my neck and it also limits what he can do. So that being said, I stay nice and connected in here, pressing off the balls of the feet, blocking at the near side hip. Okay, Ryan goes to move. Okay, I don't get moved too much, but he starts to shrimp, and I slide. Okay, so as I move in here, what I want you guys to notice is this. Okay, at the moment I start to slide, a couple things that are important in the mix that are easy to, like, you kind of have the move, but you might miss this. Ryan is typically going to start to resist me before I get all the way up here, right? So first thing is, as he buries this, what I want to do is actually keep my head about center line and always ready to bring it to the near side in case he tries to do the power bridge. And a lot of times, as you do this, you'll feel the guy kind of grab a hold of you, okay, and gear up to do that. And I don't want to get rolled over. And this is especially true, you know, if I get a guy who's got a big, like, chest to back like Jamie or something, like those guys will get good at that move. They'll roll you. Or Coleman, who can just kind of pick you up with one arm and knock you over, right? So from here, once I bring my head in, that's going to help that. The other thing is, if I let my head go back, minus a roll, this is where he can start to frame me. And with a gi, the near side grip, punching here, is really strong. So guys will throw their leg over, or they'll shrimp away from you and knock you over into that space that their body was occupying, right? I want to limit all that, so I stay in here. So always keep the knee in. Okay, make sure I go eat the chip off your shoulder, chin to shoulder. Ryan bridges. Good. I make my movement. He starts to bury his arm. Okay, I keep my head in nice and tight. I just hug him as much as I can. Okay, I'll grab whatever I can in here. This hand typically cupping, and now from here, if he's keeping that arm down, I advance with my hip. Look to bring my knees together. Wiggle until I can turn back in. Okay? On the second one, make sure you don't make a big dramatic movement. It has to be a bit non-telegraphic. Knee comes and meets, and then slides directly up the body. And don't stop until you've really jammed in there tight. A lot of times on this one, kind of see where my knee is. People will stop with their knee here. You need to get up here. So, as we're in this space, okay, I don't want to just go here. Ryan bumps and pulls his arm back in easily. Okay, so once I'm doing this, I swipe, I jam up. Okay, really make sure I'm up in that space. So basically his shoulder's sitting on top of my hip and pelvis. Okay, then I'm good to go. All right, so just try those couple details in there. Have your partner start to give you a little bit of play on that elbow, trying to pull it in, or trying to give you a bridge, just so you can feel that and adapt to it, right? Sometimes your partner just does a great job of, you keep trying to get under there and they pull it in, and they're really good with the wedge. So sometimes I'll go down to the legs and then come back. It looks like you're almost exiting the scene, but what you'll notice is there's a moment where if you have your body weight on top of somebody and you come down here and you crowd, see that little, can everybody see? If I pull right up on his side, see that little space where his elbow comes? It's just a nice mechanical thing, like right here he's kind of curled towards me, crunched in, his elbow's attached, no space. Now I've got weight on him, but I do this, space. That's all I look for. That's enough to get your body in there. So when I come in here, sometimes that's the only thing I can do to get in there with you. I don't know if you notice this.
Anymore. Never again.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see what we see then,
All
won't
over
we?
again.
So from here, okay, lock in. You do have to switch your arm position, right? So I'm going to bring this one, say I'm crossface underhook, I'm going to bring this one over, make a nice door stop in here, okay? Pressure like I'm connecting my elbow to my near side hip and I'm sprawling my near side hip. Don't be lazy and just bring your arm over, okay? So lift this up, put in a speed bump. Make sure that this motion is conservative. If I just bring my arm over like this, that's where Ryan will kick his legs up and catch me in some sort of weird thing. Some guys will Americana you with their legs and stuff, right? So from here I bring my elbow across real conservative, block out the hip with my bicep. Now I can start to shift my knee away. What I'm actually going to do is just go down, because right now his arm is in between me and his body. I want to get in between his arm and his body. So I'm going to switch down here like this while still keeping weight on him. And as my hand is in here, you can see it, I'm going to start coming down, okay, wiggling down here to the point that I'll actually bring my knee right in, because as Ryan wants to scoot, okay, my arm kind of does this part. I keep my head down, but you see what my leg's doing. It's really blocking it. It's not even in his hip right now. It's kind of underneath his own leg. This, by the way, is also where I'll feed this position, right, and start to go for the threaded mount. But as I come in here like this, okay, you'll notice that I already feel it. I feel that little space as I move his knees and point them away. The space is opened up. Now his elbow is left his rib cage just slightly. So as soon as I feel that, that's my opportunity now to just back up. I want to keep my head down again in case he tries to get his knees in here. Super flexible, guys. But as I back up now, I'm back into position. So my hip is way up deep in his armpit. I'm sandwiching with this elbow, near side elbow. And now from here, if I did want to square back up, I can do it, okay? Or we can go into what we call barbed wire position, which I'll go into next. So one more time, I'll show it from this angle. Okay. In here, keep my head down, and move in. So now I'm underneath Ryan's elbow, right? The fact that he's keeping it in tight doesn't even matter anymore. So from here, I crowd the legs, wait to feel that window between his rib cage and his elbow, and now I start to back up. Back up in here until I totally have this space opened up and that arm killed. Okay? Questions?
Is there really any reason to then switch back to turn into him? I mean, because all I'm seeing from that position is either I can continue towards the legs and do that kind of like leg glass. So I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but you know what I'm referring to, where you step through.
The threaded mount.
Exactly,
Yeah.
threaded mount. Or I just move back a little bit, can turn into knee on belly and mount, or God knows how many positions. Is it even worth turning back into? I mean, I'm just looking at it and I just see so many.
Matter of preference.
A preference,
But
yeah.
typically, you know me, I'm going to mount from there.
Yeah, that's
Or
all.
I'm going to show you guys the barbed wire position, which is something you're all familiar with. It's basically how to get the arm here, but the real ninja barbed wire is when your partner winds up like this with your weight on both
Oh,
arms.
okay.
And that is it's not a move that's like theory. It's like you can absolutely do it, and you can do it if you're slow and can barely jog from here to the you can barely jog from here to the end of the street, right? Because it's just creeping death, right? It's very glacial in nature, and all you need to do is control those points that we talked about at the beginning. Kill the near side arm. Next thing, control the far side elbow. Creep, 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 mount, smash, right? It's great. So I'm going to go into that next, but first let's do the precursor, which is this, all right? All right.
Okay.
So, take a switch, okay, again, lift of the shoulder, bring this in, elbow tight. This is very important. It's a transitional detail a lot of times people don't do, but it really limits his movement much in the way that a crossface will limit it. Keep my head down, okay, so I don't get the big bridge. Bring my arm in conservatively, block the hip before I do anything else. Okay, all like little checks and balances before I start. So, come back in, crowd, start to back up. Now once I'm in here, this is always an option. Obviously I can mount, I can turn back into him and everything. But what I do is I'll bring my arm underneath and hug so that my hand is resting on Ryan's sternum, and again I keep my head nice and low so I don't have any problems with him kicking his knees up in here. If I do, I can always just kind of check in here. But by putting my arm in this position, it's a lot different than me just having my arm down here on the mat. Like I'm kind of owning this. It's like a frame, so if he tries to bring his elbow back down, he's just running into my forearm. It's already locked. And I have his other arm like this, right? So what I'm going to do from here is just keep scooting and make sure that I feel his tricep the entire time as I come up all the way into his armpit. Okay? I know that he can't get the arm back. I don't want it to slip out. Once I feel that it's all the way deep, the next thing I'm going to do is start to bring my knee through and let it trace, okay, right alongside his tricep. And you decide based on sensitivity, based on what you feel, how early you do that. Some people, I feel if I make the switch, I'm going to lose it, so I keep moving the hip. Okay, so for Ryan, right about here, I can tell his bicep is starting to come up across his face, and now I'll start to switch my leg through so that I know I won't lose his arm. Okay, so if I pause for a moment, see where his arm is? Everybody sees it? And this one is still with me. It's not that way, which is going to let him start to rotate in that direction. It's still opposing forces. So now I switch my head, and I keep coming, and as soon as my hip disengages, look where my arm is. Okay? It's scooping it up in here. What I'll do from here is just wiggle my hand in to make sure I have it. Now both of his arms are in, and I just wait. From this position, sorry, I'm trying not to put too much weight on Ryan. From this position, it's very hard for him to stop the mount. Okay, even if he starts to bring his leg up, okay, from here, just pick your moment to come over. And now look where my body is, okay? Worst case scenario, this arm pops out. You still have a gift wrap that you can finish. But you'll notice that if I did everything really tight, my chest is actually sitting on top of both humerus bones, both upper arm bones, so I have both controlled.
That's funny.
It's horrendously compressing, and just for the mercy's sake, I'm going to let this arm come out right now, but the finish would be here. Okay, this is my position as I mount. I just pick up his head, bring this underneath. I'm not going to start to squeeze his head like this because it will neck crank him. Instead, I kind of get a rear naked choke-ish position with the hand on the head, and I just compress this way. Okay, so from here, lift it up. I can take all the time I need, okay, and just, I kind of bring my chest up, and I squeeze in, not down. Okay? It's pretty gentle. It's just compressing. You feel it on your chest. You kind of feel everything, but it's not one of those where you shear the back of his neck, which is a bit of a dick move. Like, don't do that to somebody. Okay, make it taking space out pressure. Okay, so do you want to see that, or you know what?
I think I've got it.
Okay, so good. Well, that means I'm doing it again. So I've switched. Okay, move in here, backing up the train, and my arm slides in, And I don't want to rush it. Make sure you don't lose the arm. This near side arm, the one that I'm killing, that's the one I have to keep the whole time, most importantly. So back up. Get some balances. Get some balances. Good. Ratchet that in. Make my switch. Okay? If somebody's really tough, a lot of movement in there, that whole process may take some minutes as you get everything like tight. Oh, it's not quite there yet. I really got to get this tight because they're not going anywhere, right? You're just chilling. You're just using your body weight. And that's why it's called barbed wire, because it's that pleasant, right?
In theory, it doesn't look gi specific because you're not grabbing the gi.
Not at all.
But no gi, would he be able to slide any? I mean, I'm just thinking sweat factor or anything.
It can
like
happen,
that.
but
Still
if you
get,
notice,
like, tight.
if you notice the principles we were talking about, so I had hip control, okay, I killed the near side arm. On this far arm, okay, this is super deep, so even sweat shouldn't matter if you stay jamming up here. On the far arm, I go from a wrap position, and once I come around here and I'm about to mount, I kind of just do this, right? So I'm sitting in here like this with his arm across the body, and this near side one I'm just holding like I'm holding a platter, and I'm jammed into him. So even if he does a big motion, he goes to pull that arm down, I'm right up against him, and he's pulling it on top of my
about
hand.
the top arm, to be honest.
Yeah. So once you're in here, right,
Yeah, you go.
you take your moment to mount, and the only thing that sometimes will happen with a bump right here is this one comes out, but this one is still in.
And
you
that's
can still fit.
perfect for striking.
Exactly. And what happens, he makes a big desperation move, and your chest is in here, you're going to gift wrap him, right? So it's a very solid position. It's one that you should always, as you circle to north-south, always be ready to pick up, okay? And outside the constraints of what we're talking about right now, if I were to just play more of a traditional north-south or 10 and 2 off the shoulder position, I'll still ready to pick it up, because let's say Ryan's just in here, and I'm not even killing the arm at this point yet, but I'm kind of coming around like this, okay, moving, oh, look at where we are, okay? For a second, if I can do this, I'm right back in the game, okay? So now, I've got the near side arm, okay? I get this one ratcheted in, and I'm right back there. So always hunt for that, because it's one of those things that costs you nothing to attempt, and all the burden's on your partner to bust a move to try and recover the elbow before it gets any deeper. But you don't lose position, okay? So let's try that one. I suggest definitely 1 for 1, because it kind of sucks if you are under there for
No more
too many
questions about
reps.
Parker's down, or?
Can I see it again, Coach?
So now we put it together, and just come out this way for me. So I have a few options now, with the whole goal being focused on, I'm presuming I have tight position, tight arm position, good weight distribution. I'm always blocking out the near side hip. Now I have a few ways to focus on killing the near side arm, okay? The traditional way is to slide up alongside the body, and we have all the little details in there to complete the position. Okay, once I've killed the arm and he can't get it back for a full 3 count, then we reset. I've got the bring top knee to bottom knee and kill. See if he can fight it back, reset. I've got the switch, walk down toward the legs and back up. Either kill it or continue around if you want to practice this. So looking for mount or barbed wire position, or turn back into him. Whatever it is you want to do, you can either attack or you can do the 3 count on that and just kill the near side arm, take it out of play. And this is all just the set of how to get in between the arm and the body. There's other stuff we're going to be doing as we progress, but that's what I want to focus on for right now. So it's always progressive resistance. The better your partner is doing at killing that arm and taking it out of the play, the more you can start to resist each time, to the point where sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't, right? But you can use all those options. So let's go ahead and we'll time the round. So from here, at a certain moment when I'm moving. This is why I was telling you, if you're going to make your arm position switch, I suggest both for the purposes of pressure and for positional conservation, that you don't go like this. Like, that's more of a floating game if I'm gonna be kind of baiting John and, you know, moving the light on top of him, but for tightness, okay, that's why I'm talking about this around. Like, even this motion, he could start to fight and like start to guide my arm down, right? Like, so if you intercept, yeah, like doing anything like that, right? So even from here, you know, really bringing that around tight. This one comes in like no space, because a little bit, like what happened, I mentioned to you, all of a sudden, boom, this one swims underneath, okay? If you guys feel this, there's more than one tactic from here. I'm not gonna go into everything. You know, sometimes people will switch and try and get as low as possible on the underhook and frame on the neck to separate. I do that too. But typically I don't want to have to switch all the way like this unless I'm already starting to tilt towards John's head to look at him. If I'm squared up and he gets that under, before he gets deep, throw that arm in between his legs, okay? Call that a diaper check. Okay, so if we're in here moving around, all of a sudden John gets, oh, he's got a diaper check immediately, right? Why? Because I want to get it in as early as possible. And even though I prefer to have my arm all the way on the near side, just throwing it in between is easier, okay? Now, a couple things. If I wait too long, he gets this and now he starts to get up deep underneath me. It's going to be harder. Number two, try not to make a big arm motion, because even if he's shallow, if I make a big arm motion to come up and then in, he's going to use that space to get his arm deep. So yeah, exactly. Now he's almost too far out. So it's sort of like in transition, you feel, oh, his arm's creeping in, I'm already throwing this in. And this is, like I said, a shorter travel. So once this comes in here, okay, he tries to take my back, okay, can't do it. So now I can come in and conservatively come over either to this side, or if he brings it back here, now I can come back here again. Does it make sense? So it's a very easy tool that saves you a lot of heartache. You just can't wait. Okay. The whole point I was talking about last time was that when somebody has their frames in defense, no matter what John's doing with this arm, if he's going to be trying to shrimp away from me, this one is the one that pesters me and may work on my jaw or maybe tucked underneath me so I can't get a good bite on it. But this is the one that is the bookmark. That's the frame that has to keep distance between my body, typically it's being posted on my hip, or it'll float off to the far side, but somehow he's controlling my hip, and that's his bookmark. So as he creates any space with his hip, that is what has to maintain the distance that he creates, okay? So once we've gone through the fundamental 5, whatever arm position and spatial tightness that you have, weight distribution, etc., number 1. Number 2, blocking out the near side hip. Number 3, killing the arm. So it's not just killing the arm by sliding up in here somehow. We've also got other options. I can pin his arm to the mat, and I can pin his arm to his body. And what I've been doing, if you guys have, that have rolled with me recently for the last, few months, you know that a lot of times I'm smashing this arm and just going straight across to attack the far arm, and that's what I want to get into. So it's a little more nuanced curriculum. It's not rocket science, but you have to go by feel, because a lot of times it's not like, it's definitely not a paint by numbers, like you just do this and then do this. You have to sort of feel where your partner is giving you pressure with the arm, and now I'm going to give you some options to sort of follow it so you can go off on the branch, but we're all going to wind up in the same place. Because when I attack this arm, what I really want to have happen is we create this effect where I've pinned the body, upper body, I've killed the near side arm. As I go to attack the far side arm, in the beginning, you're trying to cordon off like on one side of your head. So yes, they can still move at the shoulder, but they only have so much movement. Then we get down, so now they can only articulate from the elbow down. And then we get, so now it's only from the wrist down, and finally, like, yeah, they can wiggle their fingers, but that's all they have. Now you've completely dominated that arm, so you can submit with the arm, go into shoulder attack, but owning the arm as you go into it, or sometimes even work a choke from there. So that's what I want to work on right now. So we'll start with the near side angle, so let's say John's in his defensive position. So as I come in here, always, as we talked about before, okay, I want to be, my back is flat, I'm giving him smearing pressure, I'm on the balls of my feet, not just putting my weight on the mat, and always blocking out that near side hip, okay? I never take my arm, my knee, or my own bicep, or excuse me, my own hip away from that without putting something else there first, okay? Now from here, let me show you what it's going to look like first. Okay, so I'm going to go for the first option. So let's say John starts to move around a little bit, he's trying to escape. Okay, so that was it. So as I come in here, what I want you guys to see is as he posts on my hip, okay, he wants to just stay there, he can keep his arms just like tucked in on his chest. I'll go into that later, but right now we're assuming he's trying to, even if it's conservative, he's launching some sort of defensive measures. From here, what I'm going to do, without coming away from his hip at all, I'm going to move my body this way. So as I come up from here, I'm keeping shoulder pressure, my knee is still in his hip, I slide up, and now from here, I flatten onto that arm, okay? So think like I'm doing an Americana. Boom, in that position, but I'm doing it all with my body, okay? So, over here, first motion, up, and then pin. Now I'm actually sitting my hip bone on top of his wrist. Okay, so you can stop here and test this for a second. So John wiggles around. He can move around quite a bit with his legs, but I'm keeping my knee into his hip so he can't pull guard. And you notice he can't really move his right arm. Okay? It's a fight if he wants to wiggle that out. I've got a lot of weight on it. Once I've done that, now I'm going to start working on the forearm. So if I spin around here, okay, so I pin, and that may take a few seconds. You don't take a little bit, or it may be very quick. Once I have this now, I'll start to slide myself over from here, and first I'll post on his head with my elbow. And I just start to smear across while still keeping that arm killed. Smear, smear, smear. Okay? And now, he's either going to keep his wrist on this side of my head, or he may switch it. I don't care. Okay? So we come in. I'm posting on his head so he can't circle with me. And I just start smearing. And now, once I've advanced past where my elbow can post on his head, then I just slide my hand back. Okay, so from here, spin around a little bit. So everybody see it? Elbow, and then I go to my hand. Okay? Sometimes if his arm is starting to wiggle too far over, I'll switch, and now I'll just post on his body. Okay? And I just keep smearing across until my leg comes to the far side of his head. Now a lot of times from here, people will put weight on their knees, and I'm just going to stay sprawled. Okay? So what I really just want to do is keep him completely flat and pinned. So take a look at this initial entry all the way through. Just right here. Starting crossface underhook, sprawling pressure, hips are low, blocking out the near side hip. Okay? I slide up and pin. Now steamroller style, I come over and I just start to come straight across. I don't lift at all. I just bring his arm with me. Okay? If he brings his arm to the far side, I hug, and I go elbow, and then hand, so I keep his body where it is until I can come over. If it stays on the near side of my head, from here I may go and put this hand on his hip, and I just keep sprawling until I come over. That's the first thing I want everybody to do. Just feel that on both sides. Remember, this is intro stage. So now's the time you're just trying to get the form and the feel. So have your partner on bottom give you feedback, or ask them, can you wiggle that arm out right here? Does that feel right to you? They'll give you some verbal feedback. It's at that stage that I want it. Okay, guys? So partner up and let's try that back and forth.
You're keeping your weight on as a coach. There's a moment in there when you first kill the arm, when you first kill the near side arm, where it doesn't seem that difficult for the person to straighten their arm out. underneath. Is it either I haven't controlled it enough, or is it that really doesn't matter too much if they straighten their arm out? Kind of into that kind of crucifix, you know, one arm.
Let me feel what you're saying real quick.
Are you talking about the pressure when the hips come off you a little bit? Like you can straighten your arm up? So I think I felt the same thing he's talking about.
That's exactly what I want.
Exactly. So that's not a,
Yep.
it's not screwing with your tech.
Yeah. So all, if you guys didn't see that, all his, Ryan's arm punched out after I killed it and I started to slide, it went between my legs. That's good for me, okay, that's really good. So I'm gonna actually have Coleman jump in for a second. So, the only main correction I had in there for people was just being cognizant of not putting weight on your knees too early. So it's like a slide rule thing here where if my chest bullseye is lined up with his chest bullseye and the kind of standard position, I have to have that knee up blocking out the hip, okay? So I need to kick back the leg that's closest to his head so I can get my hips low and drive weight into him. But the compromise I don't kick both legs out is because no matter how much pressure I put on him, if I don't block out the near side hip, he'll do what? Immediately put me back into guard, right? Anybody with basic like 3-month hip movement will put anyone in guard if they kick their legs back, if they have halfway decent shrimping. So what I need to do from here is just keep that steamroller pressure as I start to move across his body once I've killed this arm. Then you'll notice that my knee kind of stays where it is, but as I move forward, I can progressively just sprawl, okay, until I come over. So I don't want to pull my weight up, pull my knees up after I've sprawled across his body and my chest has come off his body, because then I don't have the weight on him. So it's okay at that point because my knee will still be in that same vicinity, but I can let my legs just kind of kick out. And then this brings us up to more of why we do that, because there are guys like Coleman who has mutant strength and a deep chest to back. And imagine if you were like this, like this, right? Imagine you're like he is, but even bigger, like say like that with 250 on it, okay? So now we get into the guys that will power bridge you. So typically that's going to be grabbing whatever they can grab. A lot of times it'll be your knee or something like that. Power bridge. So watch the difference in here. So let's say I've smeared across, okay? I'm starting to control, okay? And I've got my weight now kind of pulled up on my knees, right? So I'm doing this. Go ahead, Coleman. Exactly. Nobody likes that to happen. It's a drag, okay? Now this time, scoot down. Now this time, will I move? Yes. Will I go over? Shouldn't. It hasn't happened yet. So what I'm going to do is as I come out from here, I always have one hand that can base. I have my head that can base. But the most important thing from here is that I'm sprawling my weight out, and as I do it, I'm going to be doing that same pelvic tilt with dead leg weight that we talk about in yoga. We talk about posture inside closed guard, that tail tucked position. So I'm sprawling my legs out, kind of making myself like wide like a spider, you know, when the wind's blowing, they flatten out, and I just do that little tilt of my hips, and then it's dead weight, okay? So this time, go ahead. This time, I can adapt to that. I can stay sprawled out. As soon as I make myself small like this, I become a ball, and then when he does the bridge, my bottom, from my hips down, get much lighter. Okay, like I've tucked myself up and he can just guide it over. When I do this, I can start to move a little bit like a compass and adapt. So typically what you'll find is your legs may come off the mat, but you're going to ultimately be like, and then poof, they come back down again. Can't complete the roll, okay? And you make any adjustments with your arm and your head that you need to. That's one. Second principle I want you to try this time, so you guys are going to try this with each other. Try and, you know, buck bridge, whatever you can do. The second thing is, I often get the question, so whichever side that they have, that you have the arm on, what do you do when they move their arm out, okay? So again, I'm not even getting into submission yet, but I thought about this for a while, you know, because I was doing this before I could teach it. I was really thinking about, all right, so you know, if the arm's on this side and he tries to go up or he goes down, or if it's on this side he goes up, down, straight or down, like what do I do? And finally, just the answer was pretty simple. I went back and played around with it, and it's just whatever they want to do with their arm, you do the opposite. It's literally that simple. So if I'm in here, I'm killing that arm. Let's say Coleman, just move it around a little bit. Good. If you're just wiggling it, that's good. I'll give you a little more slack. Okay. So let's say we're not in there. Good. So he wants to bring it up. I bring it down. Okay. Now, he's very controlled. Same here like this. Move it around a little bit. Good. So whatever he wants to do, I'm going to do the opposite. And that has kept it pretty consistent all the way through. Okay, move around a little more. Good. Got a bridge. So I just keep working it in there, little adjustments, okay? Keeping my legs sprawled out, little base and balance with my head, my hand. Whatever he's trying to do with his arm to wiggle out, you just go the opposite direction until you step over the head. And again, just dead weight from here. Let's everybody just try it again. Go that far, but now once you've sprawled across, partner on the bottom, before you switch, start to fight a little bit. Try and bridge, try and wiggle the arm around, and just make sure you can really feel fluent in that sprawled out position while hugging the arm. Okay? Let's go. Hey, Casey. Try it again.
It's just because there's pressure and you weren't really sprawled out. You were kind of like on your knees like I was at first. So put all the weight on it.
Now even a little more this time.
Put all your weight on
legs
it.
just kick out.
Alright.
What I want you to do is
Try it again.
think like dead weight in your legs. Keep them out. And
That's it.
My head was just stopping.
Your weight too was more like on the side, so it's hard to
Yeah.
just keep them dead weight. That's it. Yeah. Feel it like your legs move, but like you're not in any way, shape, or form
Yeah, I felt
starting
like
to
I
get
was still
to
attached.
you're not getting to that like super cheater zone. Just like that. And then because it's almost out of necessity. If something brings you over, you have to like do this. Like your back has to like kind of do that. So if you just stay like this, like relax, you just sort of like coast into the space.
Thank you.
To start with, arm will be on the near side, meaning the same side of my head that his head is on. So I smear it, start to come over, so now I'm putting my bookmark in here. Okay, start to move. If I feel like his arm's too far up here, I may, once I get up here a little bit and start to flatten his arm, I may do a switch. So now I hug. And when I hug, make sure you guys don't just have your hand on the mat. You've got to actually wrap the arm one way or the other, hug onto it, sprawl. Since I'm hugging and it's on this side, I'm going to now, once I've switched my arms, I now check his hip and I move forward. And I'll do it until my leg comes over his head. Okay? So from here, a couple things. Number one, if I don't do anything else with my legs, I'm still in pretty good shape. Once it comes over his head, if he tries to move towards me, my leg here, okay, basically becomes the block that my hand would have been before, right? So I come over here. So now, as I talked about, he had shoulder articulation, now that's gone. So move around a little bit. Now he's got a little bit of forearm. So now what I do is I move until I feel that my forearm is just a little bit above the bone of his elbow. Okay, just slightly above the elbow joint. And that's where I put this frame, so it's like a paper cutter underneath. And then just like any of those classic straight arm bars that you see from all the different positions in the guard even, I'm going to stretch until I find his wrist between my ear and my jaw, or excuse me, my jaw and my shoulder, and just pinch it in there like that. Now all he has is basically like a little wrist and fingers and thumb wiggling, that's it, okay? So once I come here, I just work little adjustments until I get that. Now, if John tries to do anything, it's gonna be very difficult. And now to finish, if you guys see the little mojo here with my hand, I'm not going to pop my head up, it's a common mistake, and fish, because now he just got a lot of action back. Instead, once I get here, sometimes you have enough of a fulcrum here that they'll tap just from this, but if they don't, I'm going to bring my hand in here, right next to my own head, and just slide it in. And see, I don't move my head until my hand has come in. So, John, if you defend that. Okay? He doesn't have any movement. He can only wiggle his fingers. And once this comes in, then I just lock, okay, a little figure 4 here, and then it's a very easy submission. All I have to really do from here is just flex my wrist. I don't have to do anything else, okay? So it's super minimalistic. So again, in here, as he goes to move his arm around, I'm just adjusting. I go away from where he wants to. I've got his head isolated with my thigh. I slide in, capture, okay? And once I have his wrist and thumb, then I put on the submission. Now another thing that I like to do a lot of the time, if he lets me at all, is as I start to come across here. When I get this, okay, at any point, if I can slide, like maybe he bridges or something, and there's just a little bit of motion, or any point I can slide my foreleg underneath, this is where some of you may have seen this before, I'm just going to go figure 4. Okay, you can really do it any way you want, but once I get that locked in there, now he's got a little bit of a triangle choke going on, but more importantly, it's just isolating his body, so now he's completely defensive. Once you get this, it's almost a done deal. Okay, go for the submission. So that's that side. It looks essentially the same if he swims his arm to the far side. Okay, I do basically the same thing, except now I'm checking against his head with my frame. So, most important work is done. I've killed the arm. As I start to smear forward and come off, okay, from here he brings it over. Hug. Okay, again now here. I start off with my elbow, checking his head, and then I turn, and it becomes my hand. Laying on top of him, sprawling, pelvic tilt. This you'll almost always get underneath the head, because now you can actually use your hand as an assist. So I feed that up. Good. Lock my legs. Now you almost always have the pinch right away. This is great when he tries to hide his arm over there. It's just putting you in a great position. So now, same finishing touches. Swim in, grab, and you've got it. Any questions on that?
When you're bringing the arm over, I go on that side, and I start to like raise from my belt. As you feel me coming, you pull me back up.
Yeah, it goes back to that same principle. That's a good question. So if he wants to come down and connect to something, which is very common, you just move it back up, keep swimming, okay? You feel him try and like turn it into a kimura and stuff like that, you bring it back down a little bit, okay? Just keep adjusting as you're straightening the arm out. So again, he has this, and he's only got this, then nothing. Good? Let's try it.
So with the hand that's hugging the arm, should you just like basically hug yourself, or should you like grab your own lapel like to hold it, or should you just basically just hug yourself, just like
Yeah, self-love.
Self-love.
Yeah.
All right. Good answer.
That should be.
I'm a master at self-love.
Should be. So everybody got it, but just again to make sure you understand this conceptually, and then it's just a matter of being patient and twisting the screws until you have got the tightness you need to finish. You're in no hurry doing this, whatever. This process could take, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it doesn't really matter, but it's just extremely efficient. It almost feels a lot of times like you're almost cheating, because you're like, man, I used to like fight so hard, and I do this and do these setups and stuff, and now I just like that. And it's like, if you can get it, do it, right? Because it's again that idea of the po-mission. Stupid word, but positional submission. You lose absolutely nothing, and you're going to tap the person out with a minimal travel from where you started, right? And the other side of the commission is, if I fail, do I lose position? In this case, almost never, right? You're still on top. Maybe you just spin around a little bit, you're still on north-south. But the very fact that they're, like some people are really strong and they've got that, like, just trying to get that last little bit even with your body weight, there are people like that. Okay, still on top, still in good position. I'll try something else. If that fails, keep working, but like, they're not going anywhere. They're on defense the whole time. Okay, jiu-jitsu isn't this tournament style where you only have so much time to make it work against another skilled opponent of your belt level. But real, think jiu-jitsu, like, I'm not in a hurry. I can take as long as I need to make this work. So it's not like, if you don't get a submission in 3 minutes or 5 minutes, you suck. Take 2 hours if you need to. Right? In this case, you can almost have a siesta while you do it. So anyway, principle-wise, I don't want to pull the trigger prematurely, right, Coleman? Want to make it. So from here, okay. Once I get this, I don't want to start fishing right here because, again, right now Ryan's still has elbow articulation. I only really have his shoulder dominated. So what happens from here is, again, I've got the arm, I've come over his head, now I need to frame against the body, and however much he's wiggling around, I hug and I'm patient. I'm patient. And I keep coming, I don't let my forearm creep up above his elbow onto the forearm side, it's staying on the tricep side, but this is the fight, okay, until I get up, so now I'm on his wrist. So if we spin back around again, see it? I get here, okay, and I adjust until I have it. Now once you feel between your shoulder and ear, or shoulder and jaw, whichever you like to think of, that only his wrist is really moving. Now you come in and just enough to get your fingers in, and now I have it. Okay? Good? All right, so now, great submission from here. And again, if we talk about the chain, submission chain, even if you love arm bars, like we had one of the coaches who's just awesome, like he's so tight, it's like, it's like almost, I don't know if a human being could be tighter like on an arm bar, like Kavanaugh. Even if you have great arm bars, still just think about in terms of priority. The further down the lever you are, okay, the less control you have, which is why on this one, we first shut down this, and then we shut down this, and at the end, like all they can wiggle is their fingers. What I mean by that is, jiu-jitsu that's like, oh, deadly finger locks, okay? When somebody's hopped up on adrenaline, let alone alcohol or drugs or something like that, you break their finger and they're still gonna beat you to death, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you wrist lock somebody, some people simply do not feel wrist locks at all. They just walk through it. Or if you sprain their wrist, like it doesn't stop them, you know what I'm saying? Some people, you pop their elbow, that's legit submission. I'm gonna tap to it, right? I'm gonna be jacked up, but in a fight, people can still fight. But you have the most control over them, right? Obviously the best submission is a choke because then they go to sleep regardless how tough they are. But the best one in terms of the limb is all the way up the lever where you have the most control, you attack the shoulder. Because the thing is, if you're going for a Kimura attack, like a nice old school north-south Kimura, if you miss it, you're still on top, and you can always turn it into an armbar. Whereas if you go to an armbar, you can't very easily turn it back into a Kimura, okay? Unless you're doing Kimura trap or something like that. So from here, that north-south Kimura is always an option for you. Let's just spin a little bit. So what I'm going to do, once I'm in here, is I'm going to bring my hand to the far side of Ryan's hip, and now I was talking about being sprawled out. Now I'm gonna bring my, in this case, my left knee, the one up by his head, just gonna bring that up a little bit, put a little bit of weight on it, and I'm gonna drive from this side of his hip to his other hip, once I've got the arm isolated. Why? Because I'm gonna bring Ryan up onto his side. So from here, come up. Now you'll notice his arm is between my legs, which means as I pinch my knees together from here and I sit on his head, his arm is in between my legs. It's not here fighting. The other thing you'll notice is when I come up, I drove across to bring him up on his side, but I kept the pinch of my ear and shoulder so his arm doesn't swim in, so he can now hold on to his belt and all that stuff. You deal with it if you need to, but it's miserable, right? So no connecting the arms, and ideally no grabbing his leg, his belt, anything like that. So I'm here. I know he's going to be fighting hard from here. Okay, go ahead. So I follow with my head, and I bring it up, and look, I bring it up still hugging, like this. If you prefer this version of having your knee up, it's perfectly fine. A lot of people think like it's wrong to have both knees down. It's not. You pinch your knees together and sit on his head, you actually restrict his movement. So people think you have no base, but you do. But if you want to do this, there's advantages to this as well. Make sure that, I find this to be less stable typically. So you bring your foot out a little bit, and now you make a little lean-to pressure right into his shoulder. Now you're really tight, okay? So you can do either. But as I come up, now I'm basically doing the same thing vertically that I did before horizontally. So I don't let go and now fight, because that moment is when he grabs. Instead, as I come up, I keep the pinch, keep the pinch, keep the pinch, I come inside. Now I got it. See how tight that was? Like no space at any point. Your elbows into your body, make his elbow part of your body. And when I submit, I don't do it with my arms, I do it by turning my body, okay? So it's my torso that turns, not that, right? Now, if his arm happens to come out, so let's just switch over this way for a second. Just where you were. Like, can you point your legs that way?
Oh, sure.
But just turn on your other side so you can see. So if I get here, and somehow his arm like kind of comes out, sometimes like you'll have it in between your legs, and something happens in the scramble and he comes in here, I'm still shin pinning it, right? And as I come up here, let's say I also make a mistake, and he grabs his hands together. So you screwed up a little bit at some point. There was some space, but it does happen. So one little break in here for you guys. I'm going to get my position, and typically everybody knows if you want to break, you first go in the direction that his body wants to go, which is away from the submission, and then you go towards it. So this is typically it. Like you pull this way, he releases, and then you go back into the submission. Problem is, if he's got a really good bite, it's hard to do that. But from here, check it out. I get my grip. I'm going to have the hand closest to his wrist actually come down over his wrist, so it's kind of touching, the meat of his palm a little bit. And now from here, watch.
That's
Okay?
awesome.
I go into his belt. One day I just figured this out, like brown belt. So I was like, let me try that again. So next time I got to the Kimura, I had somebody do this. I was like, I think I've discovered gold. Okay, so he grabs again. So if he's got a death grip and that yank to that side doesn't work, instead I go in to his belt. Boom. Now up, now to the side. It works. Okay? So let's go ahead and try the north-south Kimura. And remember, bring it up, super tight, still pinching. Leg is pinned. Try and avoid what I just showed you. That's only a backup plan. So my hands by the hip, bring him up onto his side, come up. No space. Hand just creeps in between, and then you've got your figure four. Finish with your body, not your arms. Okay?
Can you show getting him on the side again with this?
Yes. Okay, let me show that one more time. So from the sprawled position, okay, I've killed it. From here, so if my hand's over here checking, I bring it over to the far side. Now I put a little bit of weight on this knee, and I'm driving all the way across with his wrist, from this side of his body to the far side, but still keeping my pinch so his arm doesn't swim out. Drive. See how it brings him up? And my knee is just swooping in to fill in that space to keep him there. It's like a speed bump. Now, straighten up, take your time, boom, you've got it. Okay, so his arms started to come across, we went up, and then smeared like that, without disengaging from his body so he could connect his elbow and knee together and get a guard. However, sometimes what happens is you simply get into a situation that it doesn't quite go down that way, right? And different things that your partner will do. So I'm going to go another smear tactic here when I've tried to make the switch to get up underneath his arm, like we talked about last time. But as I do it, I'm going to show you like a pressure thing in here that makes a huge difference in terms of like, it looks the same when you're sitting out towards the head, but it's like really ratchets up the pressure and then how to kill it. Because sometimes what happens is you go to make a move, like you're frustrated, like he's just not disengaging from his body enough to do the last one. So you are going to try to sit out towards the head, but then he buries his arm in and you just can't beat it. You can't get in between, okay? So from here, moving around, take my moment, I think I can get it. I switch this way, he buries it in. Now I could just go back. What I want everybody to check out is how I'm going to take advantage of this situation. So from here, a couple key points. If you look at my posture right now, my underhook is there, of course, and I'm hugging onto his shoulder and keeping my shoulder down and my head low. And the other thing is, for a moment, typically from here, I will bring my head and tuck it in, so if there's a line of Ryan's nose going up to the ceiling, like an imaginary line, I'm to my body's side of it, or at least on the line, not across. Because there's always that moment when you sit in here, if he's got his elbow in, he has a good chance from here of framing my head away again. Yep, exactly. So, or he could do power bridge, Goldman bridge again, right? So I don't want that either. So from here, I'm going to keep my head in for a minute, and I'll just hug onto him with my arms, because I know he's got the elbow in. I know if he shrimps and creates space between us, he can connect his knee and his elbow together. So I'm going to match that with spatial tightness. So I don't just push off this foot. I'm also, if you look, see my heel comes up, I'm pushing off this foot like this. And the first thing I do before anything else, he's got his elbow buried in, is I'm going to advance a little bit while keeping pressure in. And now, check this out, okay? From here, that, right? So, from here if I do it, a little bit. From here, yep, again, right? Sometimes people make nether region noises, right? Because, I don't know, whatever was trapped in there after lunch, right? But that's like a kneading pressure, you know, like kneading dough. So there's that sweet spot when you come up onto the rib cage a little bit, and then I press. And from here, even though he's got that elbow buried in, it dramatically kills the movement to make that shrimp escape. So that's part of what I want you guys to give each other feedback and feel it. Now the next part is, how do I kill this? So I want to think again like a little bit of a slot machine arm, and I'm trying to get it in position. So Ryan's buried it in, okay? He's not giving it to me. Instead of trying to bring my arm in here and fight, like you see guys, you know, doing this type of stuff to get it in, and that's effective if you get it pinned, I want to do it with my body. I want to use jiu-jitsu and be leverage based. So from here, while pressing in with that pressure, I'm going to come forward, scoot up, forward, scoot up. And now at this point, okay, can you bring your guard in? Nope, no, I'm in pretty good shape. Now look, come alongside my body, and from here, no matter how much he tries to hide his arm, I can slip my thumb in there, and I capture his wrist. Now watch. In one motion, I'm going to go back, away from his wrist, and pin it with my arm. So I'm not going to fight. If I try and fight your arm right here, don't let me pin it down. Can't do it. Now watch. Go. Okay? Straighten my arm. Now it's pinned. So now I go across. One. Switch. Two. So just a little windshield wiper in here. One to the other. And now I hang back. This time I don't want to sprawl, because he can come up here, like, so you grab the back of my, and if he goes to bring me over now, I don't have the sprawl, so he can actually trap my leg. So now I hang back here. Write out any storm he's going to give me, and then I start to go for the submission. I'm going to pull him right back into that north-south Kimura again. That's only one thing we can do, but that's really high percentage from there, right? The trick here, the real smear campaign stuff, is how to get there once you missed getting your body in between his arm and his body. So, one more time. Switch, he buries it in. Hug on tight, head at least neutral or to the near side. Wiggle up a little bit, pressing off both feet, and give the pressure. Now I come up, so I lean and I scoot until my thumb comes in. Notice my elbow is not out at all. This is a nice direct line of force until I just catch his wrist. Now from here, instead of fighting with muscle, I go back and I pin it to straighten my arm out. It's like doing a one-arm push-up. Switch and shin pin. Okay, I'll wiggle around in here a little bit till I can hug this arm, get it exposed. Hand comes to the near side, and now at my leisure, I just come here. Okay, playing back. Now at any point, if I want to go north-south, I'm already in position. So I just bring this foot over, bring him up, I'm right back into the same game again. Also, don't forget at any point, when it starts to move around, like defending and stuff like that. Who's next? I always look for that. I'm like, where's the hand? Where's the hand? Oh, there it is. Okay?
It's awesome.
Be as cheap as possible. Okay? Opportunistic. So what haven't we covered yet? We've gotten between the arm. We've pinned it to the mat. We've pinned it up here.
What is it?
Contingency plan.
Kick it down by their side or something.
Pin it to the body.
Yeah. So if they kick it down, it should be hard if you're uptight against their body. If if you're really, like, if you're super squared up or something and they make that little sneak to the far hip or something, then you can always shin pin it and stuff like that, as we know. Go for your trademark paper cutters. But the one we haven't talked about, just in terms of like as they start to react to you, is just keep an arm alongside the body. Okay. So in that case, we're going to do another pin, which is simply go with what they're trying to do. You pin it to the body. So. Here, if I'm with Ryan, so I'm trying to do all this stuff, but he isn't having any part of it, or maybe I start and he senses it and he just pulls in and just does one of these, right? So in that case, there's no reason for me to fight trying to walk through a wall. Instead, if you keep walking into a wall, jiu-jitsu mindset is, don't go work the whatever that, like the power sled that the linemen use in football or whatever, they ram into it. Instead, find a friggin' door, right? So what I'm gonna try and do is just say, okay, now my way to kill the arm becomes kill it against his body. So let's say I'm in here like this, I keep trying to smear it, he's just making it his mission to keep it up against his body. So from here, I'm essentially going to do this. Okay, everybody see it? So I'm kind of kicking out my leg, and I'm doing a sprawl, just like somebody's trying to shoot in on your legs. You kick your legs back and you pancake them. But I'm pancaking his arm against his own body. Right? So see that motion? So from here, pancake while it's killed. So check it for a second, move around that. I can still bring my knee up here to check him on that side. Swim over. Once his arm is there, he can't hold on to me and follow me like he can if I try and go around his head with the other ones, where he may catch on to my pants or something like that. So once I'm here, I made my arm switch. Now look, I come right around and go for a submission from here. Let me show you from this side. Do it. Can't quite get it, right? So now I go here. Boom. Right. Kill it. Move. Good, it's dead. Now I come over with my arms. Now look, he can't follow. So this time I could go right into, climb from here right into the north-south again. See how I come forward? So I've got this. I want anybody to look at this real quick too. He's got his arms buried. I want an arm bar. Okay, I'm in here digging around, or I let up a little bit, now he's escaping, right? So check it out. I'm just putting my forearm wrist in here. Without lifting my chest up at all, instead I go back. As I go back from here, I go like this. In, so I slide up to his armpit, and then drive. See the pin? Now from here, I've got that arm pin. So from here, try and get it back. Good. I'm in pretty good shape, right? I'm actually sprawling on top of his tricep. And now if I combine that with his arms on this side of my head, I come back, I drive in. Now from here, look. Shin pin again. Come up. There's my Kimura.